Hey there. Welcome to the Oklahoma On Stage podcast. Come on in and sit a spell. We're going to talk a bit about some theater folk and the magic they're making. If you like what we're doing, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can find our website at oklahomaonstage.org. Got any questions for us or want to give us an idea or two? Reach out to us at oklahomaonstage@gmail.com. Hope you enjoy your time with us. This here's going to be hotter than a firecracker on the 4th of July. So sit on back, grab a drink, because this show's about to start.
Welcome back, everybody, to Oklahoma On Stage. As always, I'm Tim, your host. Today, we're sitting with a man whose fingerprints are all over the artistic DNA of Oklahoma theater. For more than 25 years, he has been an unstoppable force as an actor, director, educator, administrator, and advocate. From leading the Pollard Theater for 2 decades to shaping the next generation at Oklahoma City University as the Associate Dean of Theater, his work has influenced stages, classrooms, and communities across the state. He's portrayed icons on stage like Dr. Martin Luther King in The Mountaintop, a performance that earned him a feature in American Theater magazine, and his turn as Scrooge in A Christmas Carol garnered national and international attention from the New York Times and the BBC. As a director, he's ranged from American Idiot to The Diary of Anne Frank, from Hedwig to In the Heights, and was a contributing author to 50 key stage musicals, writing on the cultural impact of Hamilton. But beyond the resume, he's a storyteller with a mission to expand equity, representation, and humanity in American theater. Oklahoma On Stage family, please join me in welcoming W. Jerome Stevenson to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was fantastic. I've never heard myself described like that. That's pretty that's pretty wild once you say it that way.
It's kind of neat, huh?
Yeah.
So we want to just, again, get to know you a little bit better. And like we do with most everybody that's come and said on the podcast, we start with the elephant in the room. How did the theater bug bite you?
Wow. Yeah. I remember very specifically 2 events. One, my mom was a elementary school teacher, and she was sort of charged with doing the school production every year. And I remember specifically one year she was going to transcribe, I'm not supposed to say that for legal reasons, The Wiz, and put it on stage. The movie had come out. She saw the movie several times, and I watched it with her, and I would say, well, then he said this and this. And so we did that play when I was a child. There was a maypole in it, so it was sort of The Wiz meets school pageant. And then I also remember, when we were elementary school students, they took us to see a national tour of Cats that came through. And I remember thinking, I don't know what this is, but I want to be part of it. And I saw that people paid attention and they listened to each other. And more specifically, and I think this is the thing that sort of resonated with me forever, is that audiences leaned in together and they shared expressions together, or they together, or they ooh together. And I'd never seen that, particularly as among adults, right? I could never seen them sort of connect in that way when the lights go down. And that became sort of my personal mission as a storyteller. I wanted to evoke that. I wanted to provoke that, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Nice. I love how you made that connection. Now, you said your mother, lifelong educator.
Yeah.
You have said that her influence helped shape your work ethic.
Absolutely.
How did that upbringing in Tulsa shape the artist that you eventually have become?
Gosh. So my mom, single mom, my sister and I, very much involved in choir or dance or wherever. And that was a big feat for her. She really went out of her way. That required extra work hours. It required, not only did she do, teaching, but then she'd come home and go to work, or she'd go to a bank and work, or she'd go to Dillard's and work. So she really sacrificed for us to be able to have these opportunities to see that stuff up close. And I know that all the kids weren't getting that. And so I, probably a pleaser by nature, I wanted to make sure that I was earning her sacrifice. She put me in guitar lessons and bought me a guitar that had a case that had its own speaker in it, and I would go for 6 things, and I'd go, God, I don't want to go anymore, but I can't not go because she's made all this effort. That and thankfully I grew up in a community where the arts were really important on the north side of Tulsa. I went to Booker T. Washington High School, and obviously it's a rich history in performing arts. I come from the north side, which is where the Gap Band is from. I come from singers and writers, and so I was really intrigued by the acclaim and the applause, but more so I got to see up close what that required. It required that you got to go to rehearsal every week if it's the church choir, or you've got to you got to work in this way, and you got to be there for this, and sometimes that means doing it when you don't feel like doing it. And so that was really what inspired me most of all. Plus, I just had a mom who worked really hard. And so we sort of took that work ethic because that's what that's what you see. So that's how I got there. But then when I got to college, and I didn't even pursue theater in college, I was pursuing other things. But because I went to Langston University, there was always somebody sort of saying, hey, it's not enough to be good. It's not enough to be, oh, I've got this talent. You got to work hard too, because everybody around you by this point has talent. Everybody around you is a good student or is a smart kid. That's not enough. And so that level of competition also really sparks work ethic for me. And there wasn't anybody who was going to say, well, you're not working really hard, but you're kind of good at it, so I'll let you have it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to put in, right?
Nice. So I'm assuming from your current position that work ethic has still applied.
It's still here.
So do you remember, you talked a little bit about The Wiz, but do you remember your first role?
Yeah, I did. I was in The Wiz, and I played the Tin Man, right? And there's that slide some all to me, and I sang it, and people in my little mind loved it. And I was like, what is happening? Well, now I'm a big deal in my head. I will never forget the day after the play happened. At the time we were staying with my grandparents and my grandfather, who was a lovely man, but also very practical. I'm sitting on the bed, and it's time to go to school. And rather than get up and get around and get moving, I'm just sort of sitting there on my bed and replaying in my mind everything that happened at the play before that day. And I was just sort of basking in it. And he walked by the door. He looked in. I'm still doing it. He walked by a second time. I'm still doing it. He comes by the third time. And he says, all right, that's enough daydreaming. Let's get back to reality. But it had been such an impactful moment for me, right? Because it wasn't just my family. It wasn't just the people at my church. It was people I didn't know who were somehow engaged and compelled to engage in what I was doing. And I wanted to know how to do that better, how to do that more. So yeah, I remember that completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you went to Langston University. You got a bachelor's degree there. What was your degree in?
I did. My degree was actually in broadcast journalism.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a broadcast journalism student. I started as a music student, and I just didn't find my way. And then I decided I wanted to go into journalism before I found out that those might be some of the saddest people on the planet, because you're screaming into a void, trying to get people to hear a truth that may not appeal to them. And that was at the beginning of the sort of turning of the tide, because it was the sort of intersection with 24-hour news, right? It was no longer the idea of we have a couple of hours to tell you really important things, to now we have all the time in the world to figure out what to tell you, right?
The different ways to tell you.
Right. And it's the same thing over and over again. And now we're starting to interject our opinions rather than these are facts. And so it was really a time when I was like, I don't know that that's something I want to do. But I had been in a play there. They had a sort of co-production relationship with a theater company, and they brought in a guest artist, and we were doing a production of Fences. And I remember, really wanting to work hard and really wanting to impress. And so having one of the pros say, hey, you should go out and get some experience in this and see if this is your thing. Now's a good opportunity. So I did that and figured out, nope, that's what I want to do. I don't want to do journalism. It's not it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whether you're going to make money doing either one of those two things.
Sure.
But at least you're passionate about it, and at least you love it. It's the thing that gets you out of bed and goes, I'm on my way to work, rather than, I got to go to work.
Yeah. So what was life like after graduation?
Well, by that time, I had a relationship with the Pollard Theater in Guthrie. I had done some stuff up there because it was just down the road. And I thought, well, I'm going to get out in the world and sort of see what it has for me. And early on, there wasn't a lot of sort of theater work that I could do. Like, there was a ton of like, oh, you can audition for this, but you're not old enough. And and this will sound terrible, but I think you'll know what I mean. We already have a black guy and he's going to do this part, right? Like, so there's this part and there's these two things, and you can do that and you can be the T guy or whatever it is. But there was a lot of, I remember going into an audition room in Dallas, a lady coming out and said, hey, that was pretty good work. You need to build your resume. And then she said, do you have a reel? And at that time, the people that I knew said, you always say yes. And I said, of course I have a reel. What kind of reel are you looking for? And well, we want your voiceover stuff. So I went and made a tape with some equipment that a friend of mine had. And, that kind of made up copy, and you do that. But it landed me, some voiceover work. And so then all of a sudden you're doing John's Barbecue is delicious, whatever it is.
Right.
And then, that leads you to the next thing. And what I discovered really quickly is it wasn't, at least in my mind, it wasn't the quality of my work, but it was the nature of my work ethic. It was the way that I worked in the room. It was the way that people got along with me, and that I went along to get along and wasn't problematic and was on time and all those things. And that led to more and more things. And then the hard lesson became, you're going into rooms where people are seeing you, and you may not be right for that thing, or there may be already somebody who they've chosen for that thing. But if you take all that work ethic in you and all that good-naturedness and that kindness, what you ultimately do is find yourself on their lips. They go, that guy that we saw, who is that kid, right? And so that was what sort of helped me find my way into different gigs. And you find yourself doing a gig at Jubilee, or you find yourself doing a gig, at the Theater Center or whatever it is. And then I got a call. I had worked internship at Pollard, and they were like, hey, you want to come back and do this, the music directing thing? And I was like, sure, I'll music direct your show again. I don't know what music directing was, except for I knew music. I was a singer and I could pluck out notes. And so I was associate music director, a guy named Bernard Jones, and he took a liking to me and said, hey, here's what you don't know, and here's why your resume's wrong, and here's why your headshot's wrong. And somebody just did that for me. And instead of being grumpy about it, I was grateful and tried to be respectful and tried to take their advice. And so that's what landed me to the next thing. And then from that.
Being directable.
Yeah.
Means so much in this world.
Absolutely.
So you moved on to the Pollard. Now, when you performed Scrooge, was that at the Pollards?
I did Scrooge. We had a longtime Scrooge named James Ong, rest in peace, who was fantastic. And I went on for him a couple of times later in my career, just as an understudy, because he was out for some other reason. But when I played Scrooge, most notably was at Lyric Theater of Oklahoma. This is primarily during the pandemic. They did an outside version of it at the Harn Homestead, and it was in 2020 directly. So we were one of the few theaters in the country that was doing a production, and it was getting lots of traffic. I mean, they had to have so many bodies, and you had to be spread out, and people were wearing masks, and they had to be sort of shepherded from one place to another. But it was designed in such a way that each of these little buildings sort of represented a stage in Scrooge's life. And then they put out some scenery pieces like the graveyard and the Cratchit's home. And so we were able to do that. And so it's obviously garnered some attention, one, because theater was happening, and we were finding a way to make it happen regardless of our state. But also because thankfully it's the folks at Lyric, and so everybody's committed to making it really good. So it's a good production as well.
Sure.
So it made it very memorable. And I love, full disclosure, I love that show. I love A Christmas Carol. I love that story because it is such a story of, one, obviously it's about redemption, but it also reinforces one of my adages, which is, and I use this example, but I'll have to explain it. I always say in work with actors, I say, Hitler can't be a monster. And then we go, what does that mean? And I say, well, if he's a monster, then he's not like us. He's far removed from us. And the challenge with theater and the value of theater is that we can show each one of us that if you're not careful, this is the path you're on, right? And that person, it's not impossible for you to go from this to that. Just like with Scrooge, it's not impossible. He's not just mean. He's a guy who was hurt. He was a guy whose dad didn't want him at home. And so he ended up in this boarding school and he ended up alone. And then he dates this girl and he's crazy about her. And he thinks the best way to keep her is to buy her stuff. Well, to buy her stuff, you got to work. And because he's working, he can't spend any time with her. And it makes her resentful and that breaks them up. And now, rather than ever have his heart broken again like that, he is now going to be cold and and cordoned off and put his armor up. Well, we've done that. I've done that in my own life. And I've gone, my feelings got hurt. So rather than expose my feelings again, I crossed my arms and went, no, never mind, I'll do it by myself. So that road is a road that I could be on. So every time I'm able to do that show and remind people that he's not that far removed from who we are, what we have to do is see in ourselves, this is how I could get there, and this is how I combat that. So I love that show.
Wow. That's awesome. So 20 seasons. How did you get the gig as the head of Pollard?
Golly. So I had been out and sort of doing odds and ends and sort of piecing together work. And I came back there and worked in 95 to do music direction for a show. And then I sort of did project after project after project. And I was working odds and ends around town. And then as I was actually going back to finish my undergraduate degree. And as I was finishing that, I was like, well, the next thing is I'm going to go and do X, Y, and Z. But at that time, the producing artistic director was retiring and leaving. And the board president had a meeting with what was then the box office manager and the managing director. And they said, we've got an unconventional idea, but we know who might be able to see this place for what it is and to be able to take it to the next generation of story and build a new audience. And what I heard of the story, I wasn't there. But he later said, yeah, that's kind of how it went. The then board director said, who is it? And they said, well, it's Jerome. And he sort of went, what? Like he's a kid. He's a kid. He didn't know. He says, yeah, but he gets the whole piece and he's a bridge builder and he's growing as a director. And so they really advocated for me to do this job. I wouldn't have thought I was the guy to do it.
Nice.
Right. But then I was able to have a company, because at that time it had a resident company, which was not even heard of anymore in the late 90s. Somebody was doing a resident company where the actors worked at the theater. You job everybody in, right? You have an administrative team and then you hire actors for different things. But the Pollard paradigm was this sort of resident company that works there and does all of the behind the scenes production elements, but also served as the acting core company. And I had a great group. Obviously, it was not without its challenges, but they were supportive of the ideas, and we were finding our way to sort of reach the audience specifically, because that was where I feel like I did have value, is I believe in listening to audiences. I believe in hearing. I think theater is a service industry. I think if you're doing it for you, then it's never going to work. If what you're doing is, I want the applause, then that's fine. It'll last. But it's sort of like going to a high school play. People love it and they go, oh, that was great. But I don't want to go.
Yeah.
I'm going because somebody has made me go, because I'm a friend of the mother of the kids.
Right.
Right. But we were able to sort of talk to people and say, we want to reach you where you are. We want not to aim theater at you, but to have a conversation with you when these lights go out and we talk about our shared humanity. And that became our focus and mission. It was very mission driven. And sort of that was the vision for what the organization would be. And then I looked up and thought, hey, I've been here for 10 years. And we had grown in our revenues, and we'd grown in our ticket sales, and we'd grown in our donorships. And obviously I had a great team of board members and community leaders who were supportive of me, but I think ultimately they coalesced around whatever vision we had for the organization. And the other piece of that is that we found that artists really coalesced around the idea. We weren't just doing the same plays over and over. We were trying to make new plays and new musicals touch older audiences and also keep new audiences engaged, because, as anybody else, if I'm coming to shows for 20 years, at the end of that 20 years, I'm older than I was when I first started going, and I may not drive out there. So you have to keep that other audience engaged as well. And thankfully, I wasn't just locked into Golden Age musicals or war horses of plays. I read plays every day, and I tried to find things that I thought spoke to me or spoke to my friends or spoke to people who wanted to know more about me or I wanted to know more about them. So that was sort of how that happened. It was shocking and surprising, but I don't think I would have benefited from any path more than I did from that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. So through all of that, 20 seasons, nice legacy, by the way.
Thank you.
What's something that people might not understand about running a theater company for that long?
Oh gosh. Well, it depends on who you're talking about it. Because I think with artists, with actors and directors and designers, what they forget is that they are in service to someone other than themselves, right? Like we are not in service to other actors. You know, people would come and say, well, these actors would love to do this play. I'm like, great, that's great. Who's coming to see it? Like, and why are they coming to see it? It doesn't serve us to do shows because a bunch of actors or directors like them, because quite frankly, we're comping most of them anyway, right? So for actors, I think sometimes we forget every play needs to serve the audience. I think sometimes you can be trying to build audience with a play, that's for sure, but there has to be a desire to have that conversation. A play's a conversation. And if the audience doesn't want to talk about it, they're not coming to see it.
There you go.
Right? I think with the audience, what they don't maybe know is that none of it works without their engagement. It's not just about them coming. They have to contribute. The audience is the last cast member of any piece, right? And they tell you whether a moment is funny or whether that resonates. And that's why we are trained to listen to our audience. If they laugh, we give them a minute and we let them, breathe in that laughter and then pull from it rather than we're going to perform at you. We're performing with you. We're in community one with another. And I think the audiences sometimes forget that. And they might forget or not be aware that the pieces you do should challenge us. They shouldn't always be challenging, and maybe shouldn't challenge us to our core. But if they don't, we don't build that sense of community together because we in the house go and then soften up, or we pull back and go, I can't believe that they just said that. That was weird. But as the show progresses, we find ourselves leaning in and we find ourselves getting closer to our neighbor and laughing at the same time and then looking at them when they laugh because we thought that same thing was funny, but we all thought we don't get that. That community is a huge piece of why live theater, in my opinion, endures, because there's not another place where we do that. I don't even think we do that in film in the same way as we do when the living actor is on stage and talking to us in the living moment. I think it's a different level of engagement.
Wow, that's good. That's really good. So here's something that a lot of people may not know, that during your tenure in the Pollard received support from the Schubert Foundation.
Yeah.
That's a major national recognition. So tell us about that and what did it mean to you and to the company?
Oh, man. There's so much to talk about there because, and I'll just say it, Pollard isn't anymore supported by the Schubert. And it's just because I think some of the leadership changed priorities. But Schubert has forever been sort of a badge of honor in the regional theater market. And we weren't big enough to have, contention for, the Tony Awards for regional theater or anything like that. But I had talked to some people who said, city rep at the time was getting a grant from the Schubert organization. And they said, they just got to see your work and they got to believe in what you're doing. And so we started a long effort to sort of make sure that we were communicating with who we were and what we did and why. And I remember we got a call, my then managing director, Van French, got a call and said, hey, the Schubert folks called and said, sending somebody down to see a show. And at the time, we were doing a production of August Wilson's Fences. And we had brought in a guest director from Dallas, Akeem Babatunde, who was a fantastic director. And I happened to have the privilege of playing the role of Troy Maxson at that time. And so they came down and saw the show. They said, we don't want to see any board members. We don't want to go out to dinner. We just want to come and see the work you're doing. And so they did. And that was it. We didn't hear anything else. And then we got a letter in the mail with a check and an invitation to come and see them in New York. And so a couple of my board members and I went down to New York, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, what is this going to be about? And what are they going to say? And they said, how are you doing what you're doing in the middle of, and I think the lady kind of pronounced it. She said, Guthrie, Oklahoma. And we talked, kind of like we're talking now, about listening to the audience and about not aiming theater at an audience. And that happens a lot. Like people go, we've got this show that we believe is really important, and we're going to do it at an audience and tell them why if they don't understand it, they're going to get it. Well, who's going to go home from that and go, boy, that really impacted me? Other than to say, that really pissed me off. That really felt like it was aimed at me, and to say that I'm not a good person, or, but to ask them, what do you think about this? What does your spirit tell you about these people who are different maybe than you, but how they might be the same, or how there might be levels of intersection between them? And so we talked a lot about that. And she said, do that again. Every year you're doing it, and we'll back you. And we'll support you in that effort. And it was a huge win, and I was on cloud 9. And I think it was maybe the first time I thought, I'm part of a team that is making an impact in the middle of Oklahoma. And we were one of only 2 organizations at that time. And maybe it wasn't even City Rep, maybe it was Lyric at the time, that had funding from the Schubert organization. And then the third company joined, but it made a huge difference in the way I felt about the work we were producing, because I felt like it was impacting somebody at a national level, and they were saying, keep it up. So that it meant a huge deal to myself, to our board, to our company, because we weren't funding shows at $500,000 a pop. Our season collectively was just a little bit over $500,000, right? And then when it is top, it's closer to 750. But it was never like we had all this money. What we did was had a real desire to talk to people and to share stories with them, and to make our stories their stories and theirs ours. And that's, to me, is sort of the guiding principle for the way I approach theater as a director, as an actor, as an arts administrator in education. If we're not teaching our artists to be servant leaders, then I think we're missing the boat. Then it's just that high school kid that's waiting for people to applaud for them and say, that changed my life and I want more of that every day.
Yeah, very, very good. So shifting gears just a little bit,
Okay.
to you being the actor extraordinaire.
Okay.
Some notables, you mentioned Troy Maxson and Fences.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit, hit it a little bit briefly. Dr. Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
Mountaintop. Also Prospero and Tempest.
Yeah.
You played the narrator in Passing Strange, and of course Scrooge and
Yeah.
Christmas Carol. You've played some giants.
Yeah.
Which role do you think impacted you the most as a performer?
Oh, that's easy. Passing Strange. Okay. The narrator in Passing Strange. I was doing a production of Rent. I was playing Tom Collins, and one of my dear friends who was in the show, Chris Castleberry, again, because you'll see the sort of through line is this has never really been about me. It's been all about the people who say, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to learn. And Chris said, hey, have you seen this Passing Strange thing yet? Spike Lee had shot it, a video of it on Broadway when it was there. And I said, no, I've seen it. He said, well, you got to come to my house. You got to come to my house. Okay, so and I watched it, and I remember watching it and saying to him, if this happens or this happens, I got to go, because I don't know that I can handle this. And then I said to him about midway through, I don't know what this is, but it's changing my life. Because it is so much a show that almost felt like it was about me. Mm-hmm. It felt like, it's clearly not, it's about Stu because it's autobiographical, but it was about a kid who was trying to discover who he was through the arts, and he had this single mom, and he's being raised in this sort of a time where he can't be he's not maybe black enough to be this, he's not traditionally not white, he's he has got all of these things where he's trying to discover who and what he is and what his value is to the world. And he knows that it's connected to his art, but he sometimes elevates that art above his connections with people. And it impacted me so deeply, so that when I got to do it, I got to do it with this incredible company of really gifted actors who I trust immensely and who are filled with both talent and love of their craft. They are passionate about the work, but they're even more passionate about the audience that they're serving.
Ooh.
And so to be able to do that in front of audiences, I did twice, and to have the sort of response to it that I got. I had never once been involved in a show where I'll never forget one of my dear friends came to the show, such a gifted guy, national tours, he's a conductor, he's a brilliant star, I love you. But he came to the show, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, Tari's out in the outside, doesn't want to come back to the dressing room, but he's just seen the show." And I was like, "Cool, I'm gonna get dressed." He said, "Come out now, because I think he needs this." Sobbing. And we're both sobbing from the experience of this play, because it had impacted us. He from the audience perspective, and me because it had impacted him. And so it's one of those pieces that I will never forget. I keep the poster up on my wall there, just because it reminds me that sometimes we do a play and we say words and we move our arms about, right? And then sometimes we do a play that has repercussions far beyond what we could have expected. And it impacts people who might not otherwise even come to a play. I proposed to my wife at that show.
Wow.
When the curtain call for that show.
Nice.
I got to do a revival of the show because they brought it back a year later. And this wasn't me, the artistic director, going, "We're going to do this." This was a group of board members and an audience that was saying, "You didn't do it long enough. I got to bring 10 more people." And that meant the world to me. And at its key, I think the show is summed up in its phrase, "Only love is real." And to me, it is such a good example of that in the way it is written, in the way that it is structured, and what it does for an audience, and quite frankly, what it did for me.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of actors don't understand that until they have that moment.
Right.
It's kind of like one of the things that I have done for years is I'm a trainer and a teacher, and one of the things you live for is that aha moment.
Right.
And actors have those as well when they make that connection, not necessarily with a part, with a role, when they make that connection with the audience.
Right.
Because you could be the most powerful actor in the world and play an amazing role, but if the audience doesn't get it, you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, The Death of a Salesman is one of my favorites of all time. And, when I heard that Nathan Lane was playing the lead role, I thought,
Yeah.
But then, wow.
Yeah.
I got
back from seeing that show.
Yeah.
I saw it in May, right after when we were taking our students to the New York showcase. They have a showcase there for the industry. And one of my shows, that life-altering performances, brilliant staging. It was like, I understood that show. I've directed the show before. And I thought, I understood it about that much. And when I'm showing my fingers very little right now. And they opened it up to me in a way that made me go, "Oh my God, I'm just now seeing myself in it. I'm just now seeing myself as a human being reflected in his struggle." And I always thought before that I sat with judgmental eyes because I was 20-something or 30-something. And then I realized he has every right to want to believe that his sons will be successful. It may be too much for them, and it may be unrealistic, but what father doesn't think that about their sons, about their daughters? I understood it and went, "Oh, that's what the play is about." Yeah, I didn't get it. So,
and we're older too.
Yeah, of
different
course,
perspectives.
right?
So yeah,
and it'll change again in 10 years. Right? I'll go, "Oh, now I get it a different way."
Right. Yeah. So your performance in The Mountaintop earned you national attention.
Yeah.
You had a magazine article written about it and everything. What did carrying Dr. King's legacy feel like night after night?
Ooh, ooh. Um, it was awesome. And I mean that not in the it was awesome, dude, but in the awe that you have at that human being. I was 41 when I played the role. Good friend of mine who ran Oklahoma City Rep, Don Jordan, had suggested the show. He's like, we got to do it together. We'll co-pro it. You got to play the role before you get too old. I said, okay. I feel like I'm too old now. But when you start to dig into a character like that, and you start to dig into that life, what I hadn't put into perspective, I knew these facts, but I hadn't taken them into consideration. I hadn't taken them into me. Dr. King was 39 when he died. 39. And every day of the latter part of his career, he got messages that says, don't go here because we'll kill you. Don't go there because if we see you, you're dead. If somebody called me tonight and said, don't go to work because we'll scratch your car, I might not go. I'm like, well, I probably won't want to scratch up my car. Yeah. The idea that his life is under threat all the time really sat with me. And I remember very specifically, this is maybe a story I shouldn't be telling. When we did it at City Rep, I didn't know the space very well. I was at the Civic Center and the Free Theater, and I remember when there's that balcony scene where he does his final speech, and it's sort of essentially where he dies. And I remember not being able to see down the aisle of the theater. I can't see anybody there. And I was at rehearsal one day, and it occurred to me, I was like, no, you wouldn't see, would you? You wouldn't see what's down there, what's across the street, what's in another window. And that's the fear. And what if somebody doesn't like this show that you're doing? And what if somebody doesn't like this story that you're telling and wants to say, you know what, I'll fix them. And I took that fear into me and thought, but I still got to do the play. He's still got to make the speech. He's still got to do the thing. Now imagine that's not 3 weeks in a play, but it's every day of your life. It was awesome. It was an awesome responsibility. I hope that I was able to do it justice. I'm so grateful that people latched on to our production of it. I'm so glad that I got to be directed by the incredible Raymond Moreno, and I got to do the show with Janine Kay. It's a 2-person show, so it's nothing but trust in another actor and going out there and saying, okay, we got this journey to take. And it's a heavy one, and it's filled with fear and truths and things that aren't the most flattering to Dr. King's legacy, but that actually make him more human and thus more fallible and thus more brave. This regular guy who has regular guy urges and regular guy fears keeps fighting to get these people behind him to a location, to a mountaintop. I don't think I was prepared for how daunting that would be and how much I would see him in a new light after the process.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've spoken about storytelling as a community building tool.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? And do you have an example?
Sure. I think, let me rack my brain for just a second. I think at a basic sense, good storytellers engage an audience and they connect them to, like we talked about before, a sort of shared humanity. We have this in common. We laugh at this together. We all know, oh God, I feel that. Oh, it's so sad when this happens or that happens, or oh God, it's so inspiring. And when you and I, who don't know each other maybe, are sitting in a dark room facing a stage and together we laugh at the same thing or we sigh at the same thing, there is a sense of community that's formed. We may not acknowledge it, but hopefully we do. We this person laughs or they make a big guffaw and you look at them because you're laughing the same way. And now you're having a shared moment. You don't know them from Adam. You've never eaten dinner with them. You've never talked with them. But maybe at intermission, you turn and go, that part was crazy. And then all of a sudden you're in a discussion. I think that every time good storytellers connect and collaborate with good audiences, and there's that collaboration, then there's this potential for us to light that flame of community in each other. It allows us to say, wait a minute, we're of the same something. I think the example I have is that, all right, I'll give you an example of two versions. And the first is I directed a production of La Cage aux Folles, and I remember people coming and saying, oh my God, I love that play. And I tried to approach it as though it was any other romantic comedy that just happened to have two men in the lead. And I remember watching audiences leave or having them say to me, I loved it. And the wife is hugging up to the husband a little bit more because it was ultimately a romantic film, like When Harry Met Sally. It just happened to have two men at the core. And I went out of my way not to make it about lasciviousness because I don't think that's what's there. I think people add that because they think that's sort of a trope of gay culture. And I didn't find that to be true at all. And I thought it made this group of people in this really small town that might not otherwise be interested in that see this community in a new light for a moment. I don't know what it did for them beyond that, but I think that's how it builds community. I think conversely, you can do the opposite. You can say that a good storyteller can make people think you are not the same. You are different than the guy over there, or you're different than that family that didn't come from this country, or you're different than these people. And they can entrench a different shared humanity. They can entrench this is us, and that's you.
Mm.
We've seen it both be effective for good and effective for ill. I want to be effective for good because I think that will last longer. But I think it is a hard-fought battle, and some storytellers on the ill side are really good at it.
Mm. Yes, that is true. Division is a hard thing.
It is.
It's a hard thing to overcome.
It absolutely is.
We're seeing that now. So
yeah.
So your directing resume spans punk rock, classic drama, gospel musicals, contemporary social commentary. What would you say draws you into a project?
It used to be something that somebody would hire me to do. I think as I get older, it's now, do I have something to say about that? Do I have something I think I might add to the conversation? I tend to think of directing as a wonderful opportunity to teach. It's a wonderful opportunity. Obviously, what you're doing is there to bring a show together, to consolidate all these extraordinarily talented people in one story to tell. But I also think it's a great opportunity to take artists who are still developing and say, you have a thing, let's explore what that means. Because so often, young artists think, well, if you'll tell me what the right thing to do is, I'll do that. And my thought is, there isn't a right thing. And two, the only person who knows what the right thing is you.
Yeah.
My job is to watch your version of the right thing and says, there's a more right version. Or I wonder how you came to that. And let's explore if there is an idea that makes you go, oh, really what I want to be doing is, wait, I've got a new idea. That kind of thing. And so I'm always looking for a project that allows me to work with people who might have that experience, because I think that's a project that is got more potential to be alive, a project that has more potential to be magic, more project to be electric, because that discovery is really what the audience is supposed to have, right? They're supposed to go, I discovered that in the same moment you did. No, they can't do it the same moment we did because we've been rehearsing it for 6 weeks. But they can have that shared experience, and they can become, that flame can get lit with them. And that usually sparks my interest. When I think there's a potential for that, then I'm interested. Now it's scheduling and there's, well, the pay and, all that kind of stuff. And there's that kind of stuff. But at the heart, I want to have something to add to the conversation that this play evokes and that it provokes. And I want to be able to maybe impact the artist in it in a good way, in a solid way, in a way that they can take some of that stuff with them. That's what excites me about projects. I also like projects that scare me a little bit. I like when somebody says, "Hey, what do you think about directing Hedwig?" And I go, "I don't really know what Hedwig is. It's not my culture, and I don't know that, but it would be the right story for me to tell." And they go, "Well, look at it." And you go, "Well, I don't think it's." And as you read it a third time, you read it a fourth time, you start to say, "Well, I can see myself in that. Oh, that makes sense. That's a thing." And now all of a sudden, you who didn't come from that world and didn't know it have been pulled into the world. And that's your job as the director. You come into the audience, you don't know this world, it's not your world, but I'm going to show you why it is your world, because that experience has happened to me. I think, the American Idiot is sort of that thing. I didn't know that music. I'm not a Green Day fan, or wasn't a Green Day fan until I got involved in the show. And then I couldn't absorb it enough, right? My wife always says that you can tell when you're directing a play about something because that's happening in our house 24 hours a day. If you're directing Avenue Q, then we're going to be watching the Muppets, or we're going to be watching puppetry videos, or you're going to have books scattered all around the house. But I think
You had a big Green Day playlist.
you had a big Green Day playlist. And I was like, well, what is the story they're telling? That excites me. That's what draws me to a project. Is there something that my unique perspectives can bring to telling that story to somebody that might not otherwise get it? Yeah.
Very good. So you've done some very cultural and historical weighty pieces.
Sure.
I'm thinking Anne Frank, In the Heights. Yeah. How do you approach directing stories like that?
So that's that's interesting. I don't know that I have a singular approach. I try to find whatever way I can find into a piece, right? Like I'm a huge World War II buff. I find it. I mean, there's that Greatest Generation moniker, and it makes complete sense because the sacrifice that the generation was being asked to make was something I couldn't have conceived of when I first started reading that material. But then sort of how I found my way into the Diary of Anne Frank is that enough. I knew a ton about the soldiers and the weapons and the things that they did. I didn't know much about the people they were going to liberate. I didn't know much about the fact that they didn't know that they were liberating anybody. They thought they were fighting the guys that attacked them on Pearl Harbor. And then there are these stories of these other people, many of whom had tried to come to the U.S. And the U.S. said, we can't take any more people. And they are little stories and stories of incredible heroism and bravery and sacrifice. And, Meet Geese, who, was looking after the Frank family. Like, you'd think, wow, what an extraordinary story, because she doesn't know that she's safe from the ramifications of that. In fact, she's at risk.
Yeah.
Would you do that for your neighbor? Would I do that for my neighbor? I'm like, I know you, but I don't know you like that. Mm-hmm. So that's usually I find that thing that gets me into the story some way, somehow. In the Heights, you use that example. Like, I know that neighborhood. I'm from those neighborhoods. I'm like, it's not a musical. It's not the Music Band where everybody runs on. It's a world where the music is on the street all the time. Is getting the music to stop is what's weird. And how do you make that? How do you invite audiences who might otherwise say, go back to your home? How do you invite them into the neighborhood? And you go to people who live that experience and you say, would you mind me telling that story? And if they say, yeah, then would you help me? Would you help me understand what is it I don't get? What does this mean as opposed to that? Why is she abuela as opposed to abuelito? Like, what is the difference? I don't know. And I want you to bring me in, and then let me be an ambassador. Let me be a person who takes people on the journey. But all of this insight is yours. So you find your way into a story at its core. What is it? What is it? Not to the people who did it, not to the people who wrote it, but what is it to you? What does this story do for you, Jerome Stevenson, at 35 years old or 45, whatever age I'm directing it? And how can you bring people along with you on that? At the core, I think our storytelling has to be in service to our humanity. Leave the theater and think, I'm better off than I was when I got here. Or I'm better than I think I am, or I could do this better. I could be a better person in that way. If you could find a way to connect those larger themes to that simple idea, how does it impact this guy, this girl, this man, this woman, this day? Then that's a place you want to play, even with those big lofty ideas, because nobody's coming to see it because it's lofty. They're coming to see it because it matters to them.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. So was there ever a directing challenge that nearly broke you, but in the end made you better?
Sure. Gosh, there are so many. I'm just trying to think of a clear example of one. I directed a production of The Curious Incident in the Dawn of the Nighttime.
Great job.
Yeah, and I just, there was so much to take in.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much, not just about Christopher and who he is and how he sees the world, but about the complications of the people in his life, in his father. I wanted to bring as much of that story to the audience as I could, but there was so much, it became overwhelming. Like there were moments when I just couldn't wrap my mind around choices, or I couldn't wrap my mind around what does this mean? And specifically in handling Christopher's perception of the world. Maybe I don't use specific diagnoses, but I will talk about stems. I will talk about things that Christopher did that are essential to that story. And you're getting, I had advocates in the room. I had the medical folks in the room that could sort of talk to us about mental wellness and all of these pieces. But all of that's just data. It has to be translated into something that the guy who's never even heard of any of these diagnoses understands.
Yeah.
It has to be expressed to the mother who can't fathom the idea of a mother that leaves her child for some guy, right? They have to walk away from this story and go, oh, I see who these human beings are. I don't have to agree with them, but I see their humanity and I get it. That's one of those shows that it can be so, you can so wrap up in any of the 50 million or more, I should probably use a prime number, any of the I can't think of a prime number, of the many numbers that of things that are addressed in this show, and break it down to its core elements in a way that reaches people. The physicality of it. How does he see it versus how do we see it? That was the hugest thing for us. The kind of work. You know, we were like, okay, he would see numbers. He would see geometric shapes. Well, I don't see geometric shapes. I barely pass geometry, right? So how do we do that in a way that doesn't make the rest of the audience go, this is beyond my interest, beyond my scope? That's a huge one as a director that I still go, oh, we should have done this. And you never feel like you solved it. You were always better because you tackled it and you survived it. You came out on the other end, and at the end of the day, you hope it moved people. But I'm always thinking, boy, I hope I get another shot at that. I hope I get another chance to do that one.
I should have done this.
Yeah,
I could have done this better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we're all there.
Oh, yeah.
We're all at that point.
Yeah.
Whether it's directing or acting or whatever. Man, I should have, always. So then shifting a little bit, how did you get into education?
Oh, wow. It's really interesting. You know, I had always, like I said, I'd always thought of directing as an opportunity to teach. And in fact, I felt like as I had progressed past maybe 10 years or 12 years at Pollard, we were less about trying to build a new audience, which we felt like we'd done that, but we were also sort of developing, without being conscious of it, into sort of a teaching hospital, right? It was a place for kids to, young artists to come and work with seasoned veterans and sort of get their feet wet at the professional level. It wasn't a huge contract, but it was a contract. And they got a chance to sort of really work out the bugs and to develop craft. When the pandemic happened, we could tell that the country was going to be going in a very weird way, and we obviously had to shutter for a while, and it was home, and you're trying to find ways to create content and that kind of stuff. And I remember, I'll never forget, going to the store. I told this story many times. I went to the store, and I came home. You had to go through the whole washing your groceries scenario, all that stuff. And my wife says to me, hey, by the way, your child, I have a son, who was in the bedroom, and he said he's upset about something. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, well, you should talk to him. And, we're getting sort of midway through it. We're already talk about going back to school and going back to work. And I went to talk to him, and he's a young guy. He says, and he was brave enough to say this. I said, well, what's the matter? He said, well, nothing. Are you upset that you're going to have to go back to school? And he said, I'm not upset that I'll have to go back to school. I'm upset, I guess, because when we go back, you're going to go back to living at the theater. And I heard that and thought, holy shnikes.
That's a gut punch.
That's a gut punch, right? I had always thought, he's young. He doesn't even care that I'm not. And of course, that's what they project. But the reality was, he was like, I know that you're not here. I know that you're gone somewhere else. I know that you do a thing up there, and that's where your real passion is. That's where yeah. So I took that and I said, I don't want to stop doing what I do. And I also don't want him to not see that you can get up every day and be passionate about going to work. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to be his dad. There's that, we used to have these shirts that say, I can't, I have rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of a badge of honor when you're 20. You felt you were like, can't, I have rehearsal. I'm in the show. It was really cool. And I was like, that's a very different vibe when you're 40 and you're somebody's dad.
Mm-hmm.
I can't come to your thing because I have rehearsal, because my thing's more important than your thing. And so I was like, you're old enough now that you don't really have a bunch of stuff on your list that you're like, I've got to do this part. That's the only way I'll know I succeeded. I'm to the place where you can sort of say, I want to do that project. But you can't run a theater though. It just doesn't work. And so I started looking for ways that I could continue to contribute to our art. And I remember very specifically thinking, like staying up one night and thinking, I want to provide kids with what I was lucky enough to get from a series of mentors. I want to be the person who they can talk to and say, I'm going to be frank with you. You've got talent, but talent isn't enough. You got to have a work ethic. You got to have, and I want to be honest and say, you're good, but have you thought about it and why? And I was like, you've been doing that with young actors your whole career, but they're all sort of college age or post-college age. And so that led me here. I was having some really good conversations and Zoom performances with colleagues like Lance Marsh, I had a huge amount of, and continue to have a huge amount of respect for. He's a gifted director and actor, and of course, academician. He was teaching here and sort of started my journey here. And then Alyssa Branch was at OU, and she sort of got me into OU. And then I started finding that I really loved giving back to that part of the community. It's hard because much like any other parent, the faculty are always sort of parents. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And you go, okay. But every once in a while, and maybe more than that, you reach a kid who is like, I want to grow, I want to build, and you watch them develop and you think, I got to have a part in that. It's pretty fantastic, right? They're a whole new generation of storytellers, and they're diverse, and they're more worldly than I was, and they have more access to more people. They have these tools that are the internet, and they reach audiences that I could have never imagined. But at their core, they have to be great storytellers. And I have a history of sort of helping people be at least better storytellers. So that's what landed me in that education. And then I was very fortunate enough after my time at OU, Roberta Sloan, who was a dear friend and a great arts educator, and then Mark Parker, who was the dean here for many years, who I owe so much to, said, we think this might be the right job for you. You're an arts administrator, but you're also a teacher, and maybe being an associate dean is where you live. And I thought, no way. And then came in and talked to this faculty and talked to these students and talked to Mark, and it seemed to be a good fit. And again, I've been lucky enough to find my tribe.
That is absolutely awesome. Being in the right place, right time,
Right.
knowing the right people.
Right.
That's amazing.
And having the right reputation when you get there.
Because yeah, you got to build it.
Yeah.
You got to build it. So, you've said OCU's excellence has been a well-kept secret.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that or
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
but so what are you wanting to do with that secret?
I think that people know that OCU has a history for performing arts. But I think the secret is that they don't know that there are so many people who don't realize that there's a place for them here. OCU has always sort of seemed like, from our perspective, I think to a lot of people, well, you got to be really wealthy and you got to have this and you got to be of all the academies and have all the training in high school. And we're not looking for made artists. We're not looking for ready-made artists who, our students who we can put our stamp on and say, that kid was 75% of the way there when they got here. We stamped them and now they're all the way there. We're looking for the person who's got a spark who we can help. We're looking for those kids who look like me or who look like our friend Octavio Solis, the playwright who we brought in, who look like Caroline Liam, who is our head of on-camera program. There's diversity within those people. There's different socioeconomic backgrounds that come to OCU when the stars align. And so what I want to do is say, there's a place for you here. It's not elitist. It's not, nobody is talking about chakras. We're talking about the practical application of the work that we do, because this group of people are working professionals and they are committed to training students where they are to bring their unique perspective to their work as storytellers. We're not trying to make you cookie cutter versions of us. That's not useful to us. What we want to do is make sure that the students who are out there who have always driven by that Gold Star building and gone, yeah, I couldn't go there. It's too fancy for me. It's too high dollar for me. I'd have to be much more ready than that we are. And that's the secret. People know about Kelly and Kristen and, Laura Kariuki and those students, and we're grateful for them to be ambassadors. What we want other students to know is that there's a place where your story aligned with theirs, and this is the place where you might consider doing it. We're never pushing for you to come here over another place. Go to the place that's right for you. But if you think this place can help you and our students can impact you, and they do, our students are open and they want to bring new people into the fold. So we're always looking to find a pathway to tell new students, I think there might be a place for you here if this is a place that you feel would serve you.
I like it. So you're also a writer.
Sometimes.
You contributed to 50 key stage musicals.
Yeah.
You wrote a chapter on the impact of Hamilton.
Yeah.
When you were asked to write that, which arguably the most culturally seismic musical of the century, what was your lens that you brought to that project? My lens was my personal experience with the show. And it was so unique to watch from my perspective. First of all, I'm a kid who grew up in the era of sort of I call the golden age of hip hop. And I went and saw the show in New York, and I could tell, I was like, there's audience here who don't get any of the hip hop reference. Like none of that reaches them. There's a whole nother show that's happening if you're a hip hop fan, right? There are places where you're like, oh my God, that's Biggie's song that he's turned around. And he's saying that because this person is the big, there is Mobb Deep and all this stuff that's in there. Plus, there is this historical element where we're telling this historical story. But then somewhere in the middle, what happens is there is this question from the audience that says, is it right to tell this historical story through this hip hop multicultural lens? That's not what George Washington looks like. That's not what Alexander Hamilton looked like. That's not what Thomas Jefferson looked like. And so I found it fascinating, having seen the show
having taken friends with me and say, hey, we should watch the show, see what you think. And have them go, well, I didn't get why they would cast Hamilton that way or they would cast Jefferson that way. And then there were some people who went, I see it instantly what this is. I felt like I could walk a little bit on both of those sides of the fence and sort of help people on one side see what was happening on the other side, and then help the people who were seeing it from a very, hip-hop-y lens to go, I could see why they think that, but here's why it's valuable. And I couldn't articulate that before. So that was sort of what I was hoping I could bring to it. I don't have any idea if that's what happened, because that was sort of my first outing and foray into that sort of writing. But I had a blast doing it, and Robert Schneider, who edited the piece, was great about saying, hey, can we include this? And I really like what we're doing, and let's figure that out. So it was a blast, and it certainly makes me want to sort of try my hand at that again. But it was my first foray, and it was worth the price of admission.
Oh, there you go. So what do you think people should understand about Hamilton's story, the impact that it made?
Of what the impact of the musical is? Yeah, I think Hamilton reset the paradigm for musical theater storytelling.
Yep.
Because before there was this sort of golden age of we're going to present these sort of big overblown ideas, but and they're lush and they're sort of classically structured stories, right? With this sort of big epic orchestral pieces and these big voices, but they almost always reflected a certain sensibility, a certain value, a certain, what am I looking for? Sort of the Norman Rockwell version of America, if you will. And Hamilton said, we can tell you this story with these historical elements and give you a perspective about these people and about what they did through our lens. And if you're open with yourself, if you're honest with yourself, you find that these immigrants, these diverse characters, have as great a love for these stories and these characters, these historical figures, as you do. That's our shared sensibility. That's how we relate. This, Lin-Manuel Miranda would always describe Hamilton as this historical figure who was made for hip hop because he had beef with everybody. He got by on the strength of his writing. And he would by the time he described it, you're like, oh yeah, I guess he sort of is like the modern day hip hop. All right. But we hadn't seen it through that lens until he explained it to us. And I think that's the impact that Hamilton has, is it allows us to say, every story has a value, and there are multiple lenses through which to see it.
Absolutely.
We weren't doing it that way before.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's the real impact of that show. It forced us to have a conversation about who plays what and why. And is there value in telling that story from a different perspective? I know that it's been done this way every other time you've seen it. But what if it wasn't? Would that add value to the story? Would that bring a new perspective? Would that bring a new a lens, some filter?
Now, do you see that happening more now than you did before?
God, yeah. Like I see it happening much more. I think we weren't seeing, and I'm trying to think of examples. I don't think that we were seeing a Corbin, is it Corbin Blue? Is that the name? As Evan Hansen before Hamilton. I think we thought, well, this is who played it before. This is how he looks. He is a blank character. All right. But how does this casting change the impact of what that character is and what he said? I see that more and more in our work. I see that. I just got this thing, a fantastic production at Signature Theater in Virginia of Pippin. And the Catherine was a woman of color. And I thought, that plays so differently than I'd ever thought of it, just because you shifted that thing. Just because you shifted what that character looked like. Is that the only way to tell it? Absolutely not. But does it give us new tools in our storytelling? It does. And it's valuable because there is more ways to impact the audience at large by saying, and also we're going to add this lens to it. So I think, yeah, we're seeing it more and more. I think and we should continue to see it. There are places where you can't do that. There are places where it is locked into what it is because that's what it's about. There are lots of places where that isn't what it's about. It's about something far greater than that. I saw I saw an all African American cast of Emma while I was away on this trip, by Jane Austen, an interpretation written by Kate Hamill. So fun, so rich, and I was like, wait a minute, how can these characters are in this book, be transported to they can be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I see more of that, and I think Hamilton kicked that off in a way that it hadn't been done before. And now it's hard to imagine going back to one lens.
Very good. So you've also been known as a very strong advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
You've been a leading voice for DEI in Oklahoma theater. So what progress are you seeing, if at all? And what's still keeping you up at night?
God, I think maybe they're one and the same. I am seeing more people, particularly in our circles, talk about what room is there to bring diversity to a production? What room is there to bring diversity to a season? Are we making stories for an audience that reflect the spectrum of the world that they exist in, or is it just this little small sliver? I think particularly in academia, our students are so conscious of there's no people of color in this show, or there's no differently abled individuals in this show, or God, we need to be able to go out. Even our students are advocates for it. Are we going to get students who can't afford this? Are there ways that we can help build scholarships so that students who might not otherwise be able to come here could come here? All of it is an impact that didn't feel like it was there in the same way when I was coming up. At the same time, what keeps me up at night is that we can sometimes go too far, right? So I think we have to be mindful, because one of the things I hear a lot of times is somebody says, hey, you should direct this play. And the person in question may go, oh, I wouldn't direct that play because that's not my story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, oh, wait. Because I use myself as an example, or I use something like the work of August Wilson. Somebody who may not have had August Wilson's experience went, that's a story worth telling and I'm going to produce it. Now, what if they go, ooh, I would produce it, but that's not my story to tell. I'm not supposed to be involved in it. Or a gifted director who says, I'm going to direct this, I'm a man, and I'm going to direct this play about women. Well, that director may have a lens that an audience hears different than maybe a woman director or a person of color. A play about people of color may be valued. There may be value in having direction from a person who is not of color because they have access and reach to an audience. What I think we mean to say, or at least what I hope we mean to say, is that I can't do that alone. I can't do that by myself. I need people in the room who can help inform this. I need somebody to say, look, I don't know neurodivergence in the same way you do. So somebody's got to be in the room to help guide me. Rather than, I'm the director, I get to decide, I'm all the right, and you're my human props. That's what I'm hoping that we're aiming for, but it keeps me up at night because I fear that we're going to compartmentalize more if we just stay on the track of, you get to tell these stories, I get to tell those stories, and never show the twain meet.
Wow. So how do you think that we build theater spaces where everyone feels like they have ownership of the story?
I think it starts with an understanding of what the structure of theater is supposed to be in terms of hierarchy. And that's probably not a word that you're supposed to use, or hierarchy. But I say that because what I think sometimes people think is that person, she's the director and she gets to tell us what to do. So we ask her, is this right? Well, that's not the way this works, right? It works where you bring something and they say, here's what's working and here's what isn't. Everybody doesn't do it always the same way. It may not always feel like stroking or gentleness, but that's sort of what it's set up to be. I think the way you make people have ownership over it is that they have to be valued for what they contribute, for what they bring, for their perspective. I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me what your swing is. Try a big thing. Doesn't mean it always works. And sometimes the best answer you can get in the room is that's not working. Because now we know not to do this. We know we could, okay, well, what if we did this instead? What if I go the other way? And you may go, that's not working. And now we know it's somewhere in the middle, or we sort of whittle down until we find a path that makes us go, that's the show. Right? But I think you have to value what everybody you bring to the room brings to the room. You are choosing directors, producers, the people who are assembling these teams. You're choosing people based on their gifts, based on their skills. So let them use them. Director's not there to be right. Director's there to pull it all together, to see it as a singular vision. I still believe that's really important. I think visions by committee, the show by committee is a camel, right? It's like, it's not a horse. It's not exactly this. But I think being able to say, now that we know roughly what we're making, how is your perspective going to inform what it looks like? And your perspective going to inform what it looks like. I also think we have to open ourselves up to seeing things, sort of in that Hamilton vein. We have to open ourselves up to seeing things in ways that we hadn't seen them before. It's particularly interesting at university levels because, it's like, I'm doing a production of Death of a Salesman. I don't have anybody here who's 70 years old. So that part's already done. So what difference does it make if this family is made up of 4 different races or genders are different? Is there a room? And I'm not saying there always is in your production, but is there room to see it any different? And what value does that bring to the piece or to the experience for the learners? Or what value does it bring for making it more present for a community? I think that's how we ultimately say to the larger community, we want you all to see yourselves in this world. And therefore, we make sure that everybody up here reflects different quadrants of that world, rather than it's the same 6 people and they all are blonde hair and blue eyes, or they're all Latino people, from this region of the world, or African-American people from that region of the world. It has to feel like the audience you're serving. And I think that's one of the ways you increase the diversity. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's really good. That's really good. So what projects do you currently have in the works? What do you got going on right now?
I have associate deaning in the works. I'm
pretty full plate.
Yeah, it's a pretty full plate. We're working the summer and getting prepared for what we think is going to be a fantastic season of productions. I'm planning on going out and doing some work in the community maybe once the semester gets going in the fall. Nothing I've signed on to, but I've got some things I've auditioned for, and so we'll see how those things come back. I'm definitely looking at expanding my directing profile because I'm ready to get back into that work. I got an old enough teenager that he's going to do things on his own, and so I'm like, okay, I've got some room there. What I'm really interested in is finding new ways to bring our student population into intersection with the professional world. And so if I'm going to direct a project, I don't want to take a student director with me. If I'm going to bring a project, then I want students to audition for it. And I don't just mean students here. I mean students all over, because that's really where my bread and butter is. That's where my great joy comes from, is that integration. I'm hoping to, work on a couple of musical projects in the very near future. Hopefully, I'm actually working on a play with a dear friend of mine, Matthew Alvin Brown, early stages of sort of collaborating on a piece that he's written, a musical that he's written. So I'm excited about that. And then I'll just sort of see what comes next.
Okay. Sounds like a pretty good venture.
Yeah.
So, with everything that you've done already in your career, actor, director, artistic leader, educator, when you look ahead, what do you see in the future, 5, 10 years? What's pulling you?
Yeah. Well, I think what I see is the collision course that technology and live performance are on. Unfortunately, I don't think we're not going to escape the what does AI mean in the live performing arts. I don't think it destroys the performing arts. I think it's like anything else, and people are going to try to integrate it. I don't know how successful people will be with that, and I don't know the different ways people will try it, but I think that's going to be on the horizon. I think that ultimately we have such an opportunity to connect people, and I feel like, and this is just anecdotal, I feel like people want to be connected to one another. I think we feel a sense of being pulled apart. And I think there is a part of us, much like the pandemic, that says, I don't want to be pulled apart. I want to connect with people. I need to leave this house and be with other human beings. I need to leave my corner of the ring and be connected with other human beings and not be combatants with other human beings. But I think that's going to put us on a course with more theatrical event rather than the traditional audience sits on its hands and is able to applaud the thing that happens. I think they're going to be engaged more. I think it's going to be more of that sort of, it's going to be more Masquerade, the show, and less Phantom of the Opera, right? Where the audience watches, they are entertained, they applaud. And in Masquerade, they're in it. It's immersive. They're walking through the corridors. And I think theater is going to find its way into that. I think people are playing with it in a virtual reality space. They're just trying to find new ways that live experience is improved and embellished and built to be more interactive than it was 25 years ago or 50 years ago. And I think that's exciting.
I think immersive theater is definitely on the rise.
Right.
You're seeing a lot more of that. And I think AI is not going anywhere.
No,
I mean,
it's here.
You can be afraid of it if you want to, but you're gonna have to learn to live with it.
Right.
So you might as well learn to use it.
Right.
And it's a tool like anything else.
Right.
And so
I agree.
Is there a story that you haven't told yet, either on stage or in classroom, film, whatever, that you still feel called to explore?
Yes. And I don't know if this is the specific sort of like play that exists or title, but and a part of the reason why the thing with Matthew is so compelling to me is because I'm really interested in exploring this concept of, I don't know how to describe it. If parents don't want their kids to start from zero, you want to help them see, here's what I know already, and I'm going to share this information with you, and I hope that rather than feel confined by it, you will take it and use it as a springboard for the next part of your life. I really want to explore that part because it's fresh, that part of my own development, because it's fresh in my mind right now where I go, God, I wish I would have listened to this. I wish I would have paid attention to the people who say, hey, son, it goes really faster than you think it's going to go. Really take a moment and smell the roses. Those stories about leaving our kids, leaving our communities with all of the tools we have to pour into them for them to move to the next level of their existences are really important to me. I'm not as interested now in rehashing sort of old ideas and this division and that division. But what do we leave and how do we leave it? How is really interesting to me right now. So looking at those products and projects, I find myself more interested in things that you can do that have kids, that impact kids. I don't mean children's stories, but I mean kids that are drawn through a story, right? They did the Sound of Music not that long ago, and it really helped me to sort of see it from a different lens because my 50-year-old brain now goes, oh God, wouldn't you love to be able to tell your kid X, Y, and Z and have them hear it? Those are the stories that are really compelling to me right now.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Have them actually hear it.
Have them actually hear you.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, we've been talking for a while now, and that's great. But we're coming to the end of all of this, I try to end every episode that we have with a little light note, very little fun. And I have what are called our curtain call curveballs.
Okay.
These are kind of just off the wall questions meant to just be zany a little bit, to be the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay, gulp.
So yeah, it always kind of gives a little bit of anticipation if you take a step back, but it's always a lot of fun. So
okay.
Again, first thing that pops into your head, doesn't really matter. Okay, so if you could have dinner with any playwright, living or dead, who's at the table?
August Wilson is at the table 100%.
Understood. What's a role that you would never play again, but you're glad you did it once?
Oh, God. I was the narrator in Rocky Horror Show.
Okay.
It is a piece. A beautiful, fun show. That was an experience, and I'm glad I had it, but I don't need to do it again.
That show definitely takes a certain passion.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who the character is, it takes a certain kind of person.
It does.
So, what's a food that you would absolutely fight someone over if they tried to take the last bite?
Ooh. Gosh. I'd say mac and cheese. Good mac and cheese, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
You like a good mac and cheese?
I do like a good mac and cheese. In fact, I like a good turkey dinner, any of those accoutrements. Yam, sweet potatoes, the greens, all that stuff, dressing. That's the stuff that I'm like, okay, you have my burger and you have my tacos, but you can't mess with my turkey plate.
Thanksgiving's a big time for you.
Yeah. Clearly.
If your life had an overture, what instruments would open it?
Bassoon. I say that only because you remember the old Peter and the Wolf? The bassoon was the grandfather?
Okay.
That's what I hear.
Okay. It's kind of like the trombone in Charlie Brown.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
What is the most Oklahoma thing about you?
That I'm originally from Wewoka. I mean, my grandparents lived in Wewoka, and I was sort of, I think, born in that area. So I'm a Wewoka boy.
Yeah, okay. What's a piece of advice that you give students that you secretly also need to hear yourself?
The most important thing you can do as an artist is be wrong.
Wow. Okay.
That's how you grow.
Absolutely. If you could direct a production anywhere in the world, what stage is calling your name?
Oh, gosh. Just because I just left there, Signature in Virginia. Like, that space is so fun. I'd have a blast. I would have a blast there.
All right. What's a small everyday joy that you protect at all costs? The thing that resets your soul.
Good night, Dad.
Yeah, that one hit right there. Okay. What's a hobby or obsession that you have that absolutely no one would guess?
That's a great question. I love a good story-driven video game. Like The Last of Us, or they're just, and I'm a fan of D&D. I wasn't always, but my wife made me a fan of D&D. I love that kind of story.
Do you play?
I do. I've Dungeon Master. I haven't gotten to play very much, but I DM from time to time, and I love it because that idea of yes and is put to the test.
Oh yeah,
in that experience.
Yeah, very much, very much. You have one day with zero responsibilities. What are you doing with the day?
I'm just going to sit with my dog and catch up on some books or some audiobooks or some music that I haven't, because I'm so behind on this is the cool thing or this is the thing that I really loved. And it's like a list that's almost daunting to me because it always turns into, I'm going to read this thing because it's about a play I'm doing. But just the thing that is a stupid book about a hero and a thing. I'm like, bring it on, right? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Jerome, thank you for your time. Thank you for
having me.
bringing us into your office and giving us a little slice of your life. We appreciate it very much. If people are interested in you or your program, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can always reach out to me at OCU at WJ Stevenson at okcu.edu. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that email gets into the show notes of this episode. Again, thank you very much. Very insightful. A lot of great wisdom in this. And good luck and best wishes and break leg on everything that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for having me. And thank you for doing this for the art and theater community here in Oklahoma.
Absolutely. It's a labor of love.
Absolutely.
For everybody else listening at home, we appreciate your time as well. Thank you for inviting us into your life, whether it's your drive, whether it's your office, whether it's your home. We greatly appreciate it. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, our website, oklahomaonstage.org. And you can also send us an email with any of your comments, oklahomaonstage@gmail.com. We thank each and every one of you for all of your support. And as we sign off always, continue, no matter what, continue to support the arts.